Hello from the campus of Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and welcome to today's SEI webinar, I Spy with My Hacker Eye, How Hackers Use Public Info to Steal Your Creds. Sorry, that's a mouthful. You could have made it way easier on me, Destiney. My name is Dan Costa. I am a technical manager of our Enterprise Threat and Vulnerability Management team here within the CERT division of the Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute. And I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope to make this session as interactive as possible, so please engage with us via questions in the chat. We'll get as many of those addressed as we can as we get through today's presentation and discussion. I am very pleased to be joined today by Destiney Plaza, a cybersecurity engineer within the Applied Network Defense team in our CERT division. Destiney is one of our talented engineers who helps organizations advance the state of the practice in technical cybersecurity assessments to include activities like penetration testing, and brings a wealth of experience in that penetration testing data collection and analysis domain to the conversation today. So really looking forward to the conversation, the presentation, the discussion. Destiney, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that. Again, welcome to I Spy with My Hacker Eye. Like Dan mentioned, I work here at the SEI, and a lot of my work revolves around developing tools that automate certain processes in the cybersecurity space. And I love automation, but so do bad actors. They also, however, take their time to see what information you have publicly available, which helps them tailor existing tools to target you or your organization. And what do they want? Well, they want your credentials. And we're going to first bring you to what we publicly put online, which would later help attackers know what are these credentials that you have. So in the intelligence community, we use this well-known term called the amount of publicly available electronic information, PAEI. I want you to understand how much information we are producing online, formerly known as Twitter, as we know as X now. Apparently, there are 500 million tweets per day. That is a lot of information we're putting out there. And at the time of this talk, I found out that there was 3 billion monthly active Facebook users actively engaging, posting, commenting, tagging. And when it comes to LinkedIn, there's roughly 1 billion LinkedIn members currently. Dan, are you a LinkedIn member?
Unfortunately, yes, I was coerced into it relatively recently. I held out for a really long time.
And what do you think about LinkedIn, Dan? Do you feel like it prompts the user to input a lot of information?
Of course. What are social networking sites for?
Exactly. So all of this information that these platforms are acquiring from us, and all of this information that we're participating and engaging with, we all produce a pattern. All of this content that we release produces a pattern. We all have a pattern, which bad actors can leverage to crack our credentials. In the Verizon Data Breach Report 2021, it stated that the top 2 desired data types from bad actors were number 1, passwords, and number 2, your personal data, which quite oftentimes it's because we're throwing all of this information through social media. In the 2023 Verizon Data Breach Report, we saw that 86% of breaches involved stolen credentials. People ask, are passwords dead? Passwords are still not dead. Due to the use of password cracking, all of these, majority of these cyber attacks that I'm presenting right here on the screen has to do with obtaining credentials. The 2023 Verizon Data Breach Report decided to do something different. They categorized per domain the top desired data types that attackers were seeking. So we're looking at educational services, healthcare, manufacturing, and we see that the majority here, we see that personal data and credentials are the top 3 desired data types. So attackers are interested in personal data and your credentials. The 2025 Verizon Data Breach Report added new categories. And with these 2 categories I'm presenting here, personal data was the #1 desired data type. Now, after seeing all these stats, we're going to start entering to the core content of why we're here. First, we will go over through common things that people do to help hackers. The second thing we'll go over is 5 steps to crack passwords. Then we'll use this and show you how to do so in a demo attack scenario. And then we'll end it with 5 ways on how you can protect yourself. So when it comes to common things that people do, well, the #1 thing that we all are doing is not all that are doing, but most of us that are doing is using identifiable information. So, for example, right now I'm so excited. I have my new puppy Lucy. I'm so excited about my puppy Lucy that I literally made an Instagram account, added all my friends, and decided to post about my new puppy Lucy. I posted it and I'm getting likes. I'm feeling excited, and yes. But when I decide to create a LinkedIn account, I'm thinking about a new password. And as I continue to think about my new password, I'm like, aha, I think I love Lucy's a fantastic password. And I think it's so fantastic that I decide to use it on another platform. And I just can't get enough of my password. I love Lucy. It's so complicated and complex that I decided to store it on a sticky note. I write it down on a sticky note. I plop it on my monitor because I cannot forget my password. I love Lucy. We joke about this, but writing passwords down on sticky notes, on papers and notebooks, we have to be cautious because there's these things called dumpster diving attacks that whatever you throw in the dumpster actually becomes public, and anyone can go inside your dumpster and look at all the stuff that you've thrown out. And this is really important for organizations, right, where dumpster attacks are quite prevalent, looking into the dumpsters and figure out what information can I find about this organization, and voila, we have found passwords. Another thing that we happen to do is password reuse. You know, there's actually a survey on the Digital Guardian that mentioned that 50% of participants reuse passwords. And a more recent survey showed that 65% of users reuse passwords. And also stated that 38.6% wrote their passwords on sticky notes, and roughly 16% decided to store them in a password file on their computer, plain text. Alrighty. So passwords is a pretty big deal. And I'm not sure if you all recall, but there was actually an incident that had happened prior to the start of the Super Bowl 48. The stadium's internal Wi-Fi login credentials were inadvertently broadcast on national TV. What we broadcast to the public gets seen by many individuals, and this is no good. I bring this to your attention too because some of the things that we post online, um, without us knowing, happens to show passwords. For instance, when I was a social media user, I've seen some of my friends post some images of their let's say dining room, their living room, and then they have a chalkboard with their Wi-Fi password on there. And they're showing this video, and now we're exposing passwords. So we have to be really mindful of what we put there online. Alrighty, so now let's get into this. Let's get into the 5 steps to crack passwords. Since we've been talking about passwords so much, how do we actually crack them? The first thing you need to do is pause. You need to make sure you have the proper authorization to do so before continuing. You need written consent. So you can't take some of these things that you will learn throughout this and plan to learn after this and use it on a friend. You have to have written consent before you do absolutely any of this. Now we'll enter to step one. Step one is to have a Kali box. Kali Linux is a specialized operating system, and it's often run on a VM, which stands for a virtual machine. A virtual machine is a software-based computer that runs inside another computer, allowing you to use different operating systems without changing your main one. So we're using Kali within a virtual machine. This is free, open source, and it's made for penetration testers, security researchers, and curious people like us. What is really neat about Kali, however, and makes it really shine is that it has over 600 penetration testing tools, including password crackers. So step two is a password list. Where can I get one? Well, our handy dandy Kali box happens to have one for us, but you could also get one at GitHub or even generate your own. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will be using rocku.txt. Step three is the password cracking tool itself. We'll be using John the Ripper for this demonstration. There are other password cracking tools out there, but for this particular presentation, we're solely focusing on John the Ripper. John the Ripper performs brute force, and it's really neat because it can detect salts as well. So with John the Ripper, particularly, the shorter and simpler the password, the quicker John can crack them, revolving around roughly within seconds or even minutes. But when it comes to longer and more complex passwords, it can potentially range from hours to days to even weeks to crack the password, which is why password length matters. The longer your password, the more difficult it is for it to be cracked. But with John the Ripper and any password cracking tool, you need to take into consideration the crack mode and your CPU and GPU power, which affects the crack time. And to conclude on this slide, the hash algorithm that significantly impacts crack time as well. We see, for instance, MD5 is considered a weak hash, but Bcrypt is stronger, which is why it's really important for organizations to be up to date with strong hashing algorithms and hashing best practices and hashing storing best practices. Step four is to identify your target, but stop again. We need to make sure that we have authorization for this. Can we do this legally? Make sure you never do anything illegally and without consent. And step five, simple as that, start cracking. Awesome. So now we'll continue with John the Ripper and how do we use it? So we're at step one. We're on our Kali box. This is awesome, fantastic, great. Step two is to locate a word list. There's this handy command called locate word list in Kali, which it will output all the word lists in this Kali box. I see rocku.txt, which is fantastic for me. Awesome. I'm looking at the first 10 contents of rocku, and I'm seeing very simple passwords. I go ahead and cat this to look at all of the passwords that are in rocku.txt. As you can see, there are hundreds of passwords in here. Now I'll move into the applications of the Kali box. Here, there's a bunch of tools, like I mentioned, right? 600 tools, and they're categorized here. The category that I'm interested at the moment is password attacks. We see that there are various cracking tools in here, and the one that we mentioned was John. So I need to look at the help menu for John to see how I can use it. So I see all of the options that John takes in. So it has some options and a required password file. I see you can take in a word list, which is great because in the future, I want to use rocku.txt. Fantastic. It shows me the syntax of how to input my options. I also see that I can target a particular user or groups of users, or I can negate the check with a dash in front, saying, look at all users but this one. I can do the same with groups with dash dash groups, and I can also put that dash in front to negate that as well. Another thing I want you to pay attention is the format. So what is the algorithm that we will be using? It's really great for you to specify the format if you happen to have that on hand of what hashing algorithm you plan to use. So to verify what John is able to support for hashing algorithms, we'll use this command, dash dash list equals formats. Here I can see all of the formats that John is telling me it's able to handle. I see here raw MD5, which we know is quite a weak algorithm to use. And we've been talking about hashes, but what exactly is a hash and how do we get one? Well, a hash is produced from plain text first. So we have plain text, we then throw it to a hash function, and then we get outputted a hash text. So the hash representation of my plain text. So here I'm going to first try to use a dummy password, and I'm calling this password winter. That is my plain text. And I'm throwing it into the hash function MD5. And it has produced this hash representation of winter. So now we need to put this hash in a file to test John out, because John requires a password file. So we're going to go ahead and throw that in. Fantastic. So I called this file target.txt. And we're going to now throw this into John. So we do this with this command, sudo John -- format, which is ROMD5 because that's the format I know that winter's in, and my password that's found in target.txt. That was super duper fast. John was able to figure out that that hash was indeed the word winter, which is quite true. Let's make another password so we can continue to play with this. I call this password love, and I'm throwing it into the MD5 sum. I got my hash, and again, I need to throw this in a file. So I just overwrote target.txt, and now I'm going to verify that it's there. I do see it there, but so far we've been using John without a word list because John happens to have a word list already built in. But now we want to use that rocku.txt that we mentioned. So I found the path of rocku.txt in user share word list. And now I will throw this in. So I'll put the word list in here. So now we have sudo John, the word list, rocku.txt, the format, which is ROMD5, and our file target.txt. Again, that was lightning fast. It was able to detect that the password was love. Well, that's awesome. We've been seeing that John works great with our dummy values so far, but let's try something a little different. I happen to have a file in here called targets.txt where I have a few users in here. I have the username and its hash. This is the format that John likes for you to specify this. And I'm interested in the user admin. Why not? So I want to crack admin particularly in this file. So I need to remember what is that argument that I needed. And it's telling me when I looked at the help menus -- users, which is great. So now I'm going to point John to targets.txt and include the user admin. But I see that seems like it's not working. Maybe it's not MD5. So we can verify what the hash is with a really neat tool called hash-identifier. So I'm going to grab the hash of admin and throw this into hash-identifier. So hash-identifier can give us a prediction of what this hash may be. So it's an interactive tool. I throw in the hash and it's telling me there's a high probability that, hey, this is SHA-256 and not MD5 after all, which is awesome because any chance I get to know what the hashing algorithm is, the faster my crack time, because now I can tell John only focus on SHA-256. So I'm going to replace format with SHA-256. And we saw that, bam, it was able to grab it instantly, that the username was admin, which is also used as the password. We also see that there are more users to crack in that targets.txt. We have target 1 and target 2. So let's have John crack the rest of them. So I'm going to take away that argument to only look at admin and have it crack the rest of the hashes in this file. And we can see that was relatively quick as well. We see that the password for the first user, target 1, was lock777, and the password for target 2 was pizza rules. And I do agree that pizza rules. Dan, do you agree that pizza rules?
Most of the times, it depends on who's making it.
Yes. I agree that pizza rules, but I don't think it's a great password. What about you, Dan?
Not in 2025.
Not in 2025. Just a recap of what we were doing with John the Ripper. So we have this handy command here. John, we can pass in that word list, which we use, which was rocku.txt, or you can generate your own word list and pass it into John. We were able to pass in the format of the hash and also included the password file where the hash lives. We looked at word lists, identifying a particular user to crack, and yeah, this was a really easy tool to use, which is awesome. So now we're going to transition. We just learned how to use John. So how do we take all of this information in these 5 steps and actually use it? So we'll be entering in a demo attack scenario. Alrighty. So I currently work at Dunder Mifflin, which is the best company ever after the SEI. So I thought I had a great relationship with Amy. I mean, we were always go on chats at her favorite coffee shop, and then I later find out that she gave everybody on the team a raise except for me. Dan, would you be upset about that?
Depends on how big of a raise, Destiny.
It's true.
But for the purposes of this hypothetical scenario, very upset. Some
Yeah.
might even call it disgruntled.
Yeah, for sure. You got to pick your battles, but in this demo, I'm extraordinarily upset. Like, Amy has betrayed me. I'm a disgruntled employee and I want revenge, Amy. I'm coming after you. First thing I'm going to do is look if Amy has any social media. I'm going to check Instagram, and hey, looks like I come across a profile that looks like her. It says manager at Dunder Mifflin. Perfect. I think this is her. Let's go ahead and look at some of the things she's posted. It's not many posts here, but we see that her puppy Lucy, she named it after I Love Lucy. I guess she loves that TV show. Very interesting. And then we see that she has a post about Stephen King. Interesting. Looks like she definitely loves his books a lot. Gonna look at hashtag horror. Looks like that's the genre she likes to read into, but I don't think hashtag horror is for me, so I'm getting out of here. Alrighty. Okay, so I have some information about Amy so far. So okay, she has her puppy Lucy, named after I Love Lucy. She likes Stephen King. Hashtag horrors in the in her bio. So okay, all this stuff I'm keeping track of it. Fantastic. Alrighty. So now I'm gonna check Facebook to see if Amy has a Facebook account. And voila, I happen to found Amy. And I'm going to see if she has any publicly identifiable information here. Her Facebook account happens to be public. Yikes. And yikes for her, but good for me. Dan, can you identify any PII in here?
No, it's littered with PII, Destiny.
Yeah. Name one, Dan.
Name?
Name. Fantastic. You got it, Dan. Full name. I have her full name here. We have her birthday. We have where she currently lives. And we can also gather more information about her music interests. We can look at her mutual friends to see what they post about her, any photos she's tagged in, and what activities she likes to do. I mean, this is all juicy information. Alrighty. Now, I just happen to be at the right place at the right time on the right network. Remember, I said that I know where she loves to drink coffee because I used to drink coffee with her. However, I'm getting revenge on Amy, so I know she likes this particular coffee shop. I decided to go there disguised with my hacker hoodie on and sniff the network. So I performed a network sniffing attack and was able to acquire a hash from her Spotify account, which is awesome. Awesome, awesome. So this is one way you can do it, and this is the way I'm showing in this demo, but there's multiple ways where you can have initial access to something. There's adversary in the middle. You can have ARP cache poisoning, evil twin attacks. You can use brute force, right, to guess someone's password. Password guessing, password cracking, password spraying, and password stuffing. You can have exploitation for credential access, which takes advantage of an error in software. I can try to leverage SQL injections, OS injections, and insider threats, which is Dan's favorite word. He's the expert in insider threats. So one example of this is that maybe in our internal networks using Jira, using Slack, using chats, I've placed passwords in there. People can also leverage social engineering and phishing attacks. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Dan?
I don't think so. I think you've done a good job kind of highlighting the other ways that we see these credentials being harvested when we go out and do penetration tests, right? And I think the demonstration for folks that haven't checked in on this technology recently, hopefully it makes them, have a real understanding of the fact that the technical barrier to entry for this stuff is really low. There's been a lot of time and attention and effort and expertise put into the tooling that makes things that used to cost a lot of time and require specialized expertise and skills that were very hard to hone and craft, makes those trivial things that we can kind of explain to folks, in a really easy to digest and follow and replicate format. And if we, the cybersecurity researchers and engineers on the good side, can figure that out, it's okay. And the folks on the not so good side. So, the barrier to technical entry to launch these attacks that get you access to networks and systems that cause potential harm to organizations has been lowered dramatically and continues to lower, primarily attributed to something that we're going to talk about a little bit later, which are some kind of recent changes in the technological landscape. But I think the demonstration tests are fantastic. I'm glad I don't work at Dunder Mifflin because it sounds like they're about to have a very bad day, particularly on the IT security side.
They sure are, Dan, and thank you so much for adding on. Fantastic. So now let's kind of take a pause and see where we're at here. So currently we have some information that we have gathered about Amy, our victim, which is great, right? We have some information that we've gathered from social media, her Instagram account that was public, and her Facebook account, which was also public. I was able to obtain a password hash, fantastic, from her Spotify account, sniff that off the network, and my next step is to create a custom wordless to crack the hash using John. But as any bad actor, we're quite lazy. I don't think that they are going to manually create a wordless. We're going to leverage some tools that automate this for us. And the tool that we can use to leverage this for us, because as a hacker myself, I would be quite lazy, is to use this tool called Common User Password Profiler, where it is able to take in information about my victim. I throw this information about my victim to this tool and it outputs a password file for me. Alrighty, so I already have this downloaded. You're able to get this free on GitHub. And I have my password hash in creds.txt. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and look at the help menu for cup.py. And I see that there's one particular option that I like, and it is interactive mode. That makes life easier for me. It's quite easy to use. Alrighty, in interactive mode, the first prompt it asks me is to include the first name. First name is Amy, surname, blank, nickname. Sometimes at work we call her Ames. Birth date, I got that from Facebook, remember? So I'm gonna add that in there. Partner's name, she doesn't have one. Child's name, no children that I'm aware of. Pet's name, yes, we did see that on Instagram, Lucy. Company, that's where I work, Dunder Mifflin. Do I want to add some keywords about my victim? Well, I sure do. I did a little bit of homework. I wasn't that lazy. I got some information about her. All right, so what's some things I can include in here? Chicago. Yeah, that's her hometown. That's where she lives right now. Stephen King, yes, because on Instagram I saw she loved to read Stephen King. When you think of Stephen King, you think of horror. So hashtag horror was in her bio, so horror is good there. Coffee, because she's always drinking coffee. Animals, she has a puppy, so she likes animals. Okay. Any special characters? I'll say yeah, I'll add that. Random numbers for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll just say no. Leap mode, I'll say no as well. Okay, awesome. So now it is working. It is saving a dictionary to amy.txt. Wow, I'm gonna hyperspeed print this and I can see all of the passwords that has generated for me. Wow, that's amazing. So it outputted all the passwords in this file called amy.txt. So let's go ahead and look at the first 10 contents of Amy. You see some random characters there. Tail it. We see different variations of her name and some numbers with the birth year. I'm gonna look inside here and see all of these passwords it was able to create. I wouldn't have thought about these. Stephen King is in here, Lucy, different iterations of Lucy is in here. Okay, awesome. This is great. I'm really grateful for this tool. Sweet. So now we'll move on to the next step. Remember that I have this password hash from Spotify. I store that in creds.txt. Let's go ahead and look at it. Okay, my password hash is there. Fantastic. And I want to crack this, but remember there is a handy tool, hash dash identifier. I want to increase crack time. I want this to be effective, so I need to make sure I know what hash this hash is. So I'm going to throw that hash in there. Awesome. And it's telling me, hey, it looks like there's a high probability this is SHA-1. Fantastic. So I'm going to use this with John. So thankfully we learned how to use John, and now we actually have some context to use it with. So I'm going to use John here, -w, because my password file, my word list now is in amy.txt. The format we saw SHA-1, and the password hash found in creds.txt. Crack that. That was like in a matter of seconds. That was super fast. And we see that the password was horror underscore 1980. Wow. So it looks like Amy wasn't that smart after all. I was able to obtain this password. Who would have known, right? That the genre she loves to read would be in her password. But you know something? I don't care about having access to her Spotify account that much, or maybe I could leverage it and get some credit card information, but I want to see if she uses horror underscore 1980 in different accounts. So I'm going to perform a credential stuffing attack. So I happen to be on a spoof VPN, so no one knows where this is coming from, my login attempt. And I noticed that when she was using Spotify, she was using her work email. Yikes. People that work in organizations, you should not use your email for personal accounts at all. And that's exactly what Amy was doing. So I'm just going to imagine that Amy is using this for her bank account. So I have her work email here. I'm going to stuff this password I just happened to crack from her Spotify account. And I'm going to throw this her bank account here, Bank of America. Let's see if Amy was smart enough to not reuse her password. Let me check. Bam! I'm in! And guess what? She was not using multi-factor authentication, and now I have access to all the monies. Dan, what are we going to do with this money?
More pizza and coffee, I suppose, and hope that she's not using the same password for anything she's authenticating to a Dunder Mifflin network for.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Well, Destiny, one of the things that you've also brought to my attention as you walk through the second part of the demo is the fact that my amazing way of using leet speak to translate things like O's to zeros and E's to threes, that now that's already been worked into the password cracking tool. So I've got some work to do when I get back upstairs to make some modifications to my password schemes. It's
Yeah,
another amazing example of how this is only going one direction. The tooling is only getting more effective and efficient, which is really kind of increasing the burden on us, kind of people, and just the organizations who are responsible for setting things like password policies. Because in the absence of robust defenses, both on the preventative and detective control side of the house, it's just so easy for attackers to kind of take advantage of what's historically been really hard to do.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. So yeah, in this demo, wow, we were able to get access to Amy's bank account. Now we've learned a lot about how to crack passwords, and we need to end this on a good note. Do we need to end this on a good note, Dan?
I mean, usually I like to scare people and then remind them that it's not so scary after all. So yeah, absolutely.
Very true. The good note is that we're going to teach you some 5 ways to protect yourself. So wipe that sweat off, and Dan, you wipe it off too, because I know you're planning to run upstairs, but we're going to help you as well, Dan. The first step here of 5 ways to protect yourself is to not include identifiable information in your creds. I mean, that's what majority of this talk was all about, is not including identifiable information in your creds. As we saw with Amy, all the things she was posting online leveraged me to be able to crack her password. The other step is password best practices. So number one thing here is do not reuse passwords. That's exactly what Amy was doing in this scenario. Another note for password best practices is the use of pass phrases. So Dr. Lori Craner here at CMU has done a lot extensive research on passphrases, to the point that even NIST now includes statements about the use and importance of passphrases. Passphrases, an example of a passphrase is something like correct horse battery stapled, using terms that are familiar with you. And what's really neat about that is because now with passphrases, I can have a longer password. Because why? Length matters, which is amazing. The longer my password, the more difficult it is to crack. You could also increase the complexity of your passwords by introducing special characters. Another step here is to utilize multi-factor authentication. Amy in this situation was not using multi-factor authentication. We used her password. I had easy access to her account and maybe other accounts in the future. An example of multi-factor authentication is something like when you log in with your password, a code is sent to your phone. You utilize that code to input it in, and now you have access. You can also consider the use of pass keys, but dominant, and you do have to be wary of SIM swapping. So SIM swapping is when a code is sent to your phone, an attacker is able to leverage that and have a code sent to their phone, to put it as simple as possible. So, but there are other multi-factor authentication techniques out there that we could use. The fourth step here is to use password managers. As we know, we shouldn't be reusing passwords, so it's quite a difficult process to try to memorize all these passwords. Can you memorize 30 passwords, Dan?
How many, Destiny?
30.
I'm probably pretty close, but at a certain point, I rely on a password manager.
Awesome. And you as a manager, Dan, you have a lot of accounts you have to work with, so it starts to get extensive. So it's highly recommended that you use password managers. And something neat about password managers also is that it can even auto-generate secure passwords for you. And lastly, I want to end with privacy screens. There's this attack called shoulder surfing, where people are looking over your shoulder to see what's on your screen. You can buy a privacy screen for your laptop. You can purchase privacy screen for your cell phone. I personally use this. I've been in conferences where I see people looking at my screen, and they've made it known, because as they look at my screen, they say, "Hey, I see you working on your computer, but I don't see anything on your screen." But now they've just told me that they are interested in our screen. But yes, these are the 5 ways to protect yourself. And now we want to dive into some advanced methods, and something that we find presently now, AI. Dan, take it away.
Well, I mean, let's continue the conversation just in and around the progression of the technology and the tooling that enables, attackers and kind of attack emulators to more efficiently, gain access to credentials and then, find ways to put those credentials to use. We look at not only kind of the commoditization of the tooling, but now we're starting to see the adoption of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. In cybersecurity, everyone is trying everything to see whether or not there's a good AI fit. Certainly, password cracking, credential stealing, finding ways to leverage what's publicly available to do things like build better phishing messages, to build better context based password cracking schemes. We're starting to see kind of not only are folks trying those things, but we're seeing kind of signs and evidence that suggest that A, those are successful, and B, providing, some improvements over, the current state of the practice with regards to the efficacy of some of these different types of attacks. So, as that space continues to commoditize, it's another reason why we're going to have to redouble down on our efforts from a training and awareness perspective, from a policy, procedure, and practice and policy enforcement perspective. So it's not enough to just say that these are the rules, but how do we make sure that those rules are being adhered to?
Yeah.
But also from a defensive perspective. So increasing our auditability and visibility of the capabilities that attackers are using to build these profiles and packages, launch these attacks. So the attack surface is changing, and the tools of the trade by way of what the attackers are utilizing to learn more about us and to put some old tried and true techniques into practice is changing. So the defenses have to pick up as well.
Yeah, definitely. And training is a big part of that, which is why we need to start with the people. Uh, the people are can be a great weakness if we don't train them properly. We don't have proper policies in place. We're trying to protect the people. We protect the people first. We'll protect the organizations. Um, Already, if you are at all now concerned if an account of yours has been cracked, you're able to hop onto haveibeenpwned.com, type in all the usernames that you utilize for different accounts, and it does a pretty good job of keeping track of a database and figuring out if a particular account has been compromised due to any breaches or anything like that. If you happen to see that your account has been compromised, then it's highly recommended that you quickly change your password. And also, if you don't have multi-factor authentication, we highly recommend that you do so add. And we welcome any questions at this time.
Yeah, really good stuff, Destiney. I want to go back to kind of the recommendations and maybe look at those through the lens of not just kind of a person, but as an organization, kind of more broadly. With the changes in the ease with which attackers can launch these attacks and harvest credentials and things like that, what should organizations be doing better, differently to kind of inoculate themselves from these types of concerns?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty broad question because there's certainly many ways of how you need to go about that. And well, I think one thing that we've been mentioning here is multi-factor authentication. So that's definitely one way and a quite easy way to definitely protect people and your organization. Um, we also need to pay attention to any phishing emails. I've noticed that here in the SCI, we're doing a quite great job at detecting potential phishing emails, spear phishing emails, and giving us a warning. So we need to include technologies in our email systems to help so that users don't become weak and vulnerable to spear phishing. If we can handle this on a technological standpoint, we're able to ensure that users are not being vulnerable to these attacks. Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
I think you hit the big ones, right? Not relying on passwords as your single source of authentication where possible and practical. And then just continuing to remind the workforce that these attacks are kind of out there and that they are susceptible to them, and they become more susceptible based on the relationship between what they put out in the world about them and how they authenticate to our networks and systems of interest. So, I love, taking some of the recommendations that you're providing here and then just turning those into the contents that we put out in things like Cybersecurity Awareness Month, just our general workforce training, right? This is a really good example of, bridging the gap between how we behave digitally in our personal lives and how those actions may, open up, unintended kind of risk exposures to our employers. If we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing at making those things kind of context free, independent, not reusable, right? So, that message resonates with a lot of folks, and I think some folks go, sure, yeah, whatever. I guess I'll do that, in my free time. But being able to demonstrate to folks kind of end to end how one of these attacks works and showing them how easy it is. A button clicks away, reading a couple of README files, we can get to, stolen credentials relatively quickly. I think that helps folks understand, but really, where we're at in terms of kind of what we're up against from a defensive perspective and kind of the uniqueness of the ask that we have to them to play their part and to keep their credentials safe.
Fantastic.
Okay, Destiney, I have one more question that looks like it's come in here, and it goes back to putting some of this stuff into context, right? So we're working with an organization, we're helping them kind of understand the security posture of their networks and systems, and demonstrating to them the viability of attack paths that include things like you've just walked us through. Based on our experience with the applied network defense team and helping organizations advance the state of the practice with regards to technical cybersecurity assessments, what can organizations do to make it easier for them to kind of analyze data that comes from those different assessments that they get? How do they kind of increase the insights and the analytics that they're able to derive from those types of assessments?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. So, here in our team, we're currently building tools, right, to help people analyze that information that they gather from penetration assessments, and I think organizations have benefit greatly from that. So we need to make a way that we make that more accessible to them. So creating tools like we have. Penetration AET, which you can find on CISA GitHub that we have publicly available. And we also have publicly available, since we're on this theme, um, a vulnerability kind of database that we have set up with all these common vulnerabilities that organizations should consider um, when trying to see what their security posture is. So we penetration testers, they're extremely experienced that we have on this team, have done multiple assessments, and they've been able to see what's the most common vulnerabilities that organizations should watch out for. So we would definitely love to point you on that direction. And yeah, we also have this SBT scoping validation tool. It's also live on CISA GitHub, which was also a really great and different tool because it ensures that penetration testers are focusing on what needs higher priority to ensure that we are properly assessing the security posture of the organization. Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
I think you nailed it, Destiny. When I look at what organizations kind of struggle with when it comes to just really gaining insights from any type of assessment process within an organization, usually that comes down to a lack of standardization of both the process and methodology that they use to conduct the assessment, and then B, how they categorize the results. So not only what they did, but what they found, right? And our team, I think, has worked with several organizations over the years to produce controlled vocabularies, things that just help normalize, organize, and standardize A, what we do on these types of assessments, and then B, how we describe the things that we've done and the things that we've found that may be of potential security concern. So, our hope and expectation by releasing things like the findings repository is that we see increased adoption of those standards, those controlled vocabularies, so that we can start counting better as a community, so that we can do better trends analysis, et cetera, and so that we can, make some positive progress towards kind of automating portions of these kind of technical cybersecurity assessments. These are still, even though the tooling is there and it's helping us do these more effectively and more efficiently, there's a lot more opportunities for potential automation of some of these processes if we better define them and normalize the activities associated with these different tests, because this is security testing, a variation of it, right? And taking that kind of test-based mindset and approach to what it is that we're doing, I think will allow us to continue to explore, identify, and produce, other opportunities for automating portions of these processes, for producing, more tooling so that there can be 1,200 tools in Cali as opposed to 600, which if you go back a few years, that number has, significantly increased from, the last time we talked about some of this stuff in a forum like this, right? So, I think, our role as an FFRDC is really in that kind of process definition, process identification, process modeling, process refinement, process automation space. We're making great strides. We're really excited to get several of the capabilities that Destiney has mentioned out into the hands of users, and certainly looking for feedback on those as well. Well, Destiney, great stuff as always. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise. We want to thank everybody for attending today. Destiney, I get to do my favorite part now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. In just a quick programming note from us, our next webcast will be May 19th. The topic will be the state of DevSecOps in the DoD. Where are we and what's next? So registration information will be shared via email to those of you that has registered for this. Destiney, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, everybody.